Okay, dear students, we are going to see in detail what is demand pull inflation. So it comes under modern theory of inflation, where the theory says that both aggregate demand and aggregate supply, it's a synthesis of aggregate demand and aggregate supply. So both aggregate demand and aggregate supply plays an important role in the modern theories of inflation. So modern theories of inflation are two, that is demand pull inflation and cost push inflation. So I already told you the demand pull inflation takes place due to demand pull factors or demand side factors, and cost push inflation takes place due to cost push factors or cost supply side factors. Okay, so demand pull inflation. Now what is demand pull inflation? Demand pull inflation occurs when aggregate demand increases much more than the aggregate supply. Aggregate demand increases much more than the aggregate supply. So aggregate demand increases much more than the aggregate supply. Okay, demand pull inflation occurs, or we can say given the aggregate supply, that means aggregate supply is given that remains constant, given the aggregate supply, when aggregate demand increases, that will cause increase in price level. Okay, given the aggregate supply, when aggregate demand increases, inflation occurs, and that inflation is known as a demand pull inflation. It is caused by what? The demand side factors. Demand side factors push up the demand, increases the demand, and aggregate supply does not increases, rather aggregate supply remains constant. That causes inflation, that is known as demand pull inflation. Now I explain with this help of this diagram. You can see here, we will see the factors after that, how demand pull inflation occurs. See, we can see here, this is the aggregate supply curve. Okay, the aggregate supply curve has got, shall I remove this so that you will understand, you will be able to draw also properly. So once I remove this, let's see. Okay, so aggregate supply curve has got. So you have here aggregate price level on the y-axis, okay, and aggregate demand and aggregate supply on the x-axis. Okay. Now aggregate supply curve goes like this: a positive, gentle positive slope, and then it becomes vertical. Okay, it becomes vertical. Can you follow? You should draw like this. It becomes vertical. So I am going to draw a line like this, vertical, which shows full employment level of output. Okay. So what does it mean? When aggregate demand increases, okay, so this is aggregate demand curve, AD1. Okay, demand curve AD1. Okay, when aggregate demand increases, output also increases from OY1. When aggregate demand increases to AD2, output also increases to OY2. Okay, when aggregate demand increases AD3, output increases to OYF. So at AD3, output remains constant. Look at here. At OY1 price level is V1, at OY2 price level is V2, at OY3 price level is V3. Okay. So what do you see? Price level is increasing as a result of increased aggregate demand. Now here, this theory especially says that, demand pull inflation says that, given the aggregate supply, when aggregate demand increases, price level increases, and that is known as demand pull inflation. So price level, increase in price level, okay, below the side, when aggregate supply remains constant, below the side is not called inflationary. Price level is increasing, not inflationary. Inflationary situation occurs when again aggregate demand increases. Is there any possibility of increasing output? No. Output is already reached full employment level. There is no possibility of increasing aggregate output. So, given the aggregate supply, when aggregate demand increases, that causes an increase in P, that is known as demand pull inflation. So, you can see here, so a price level increase from P3 to P4 is considered as inflationary, caused by increase in aggregate demand given the aggregate supply. That means aggregate supply remains constant, and in that case, when again aggregate demand increases, that causes inflation. So P3 to P4 is real problem of inflation because output does not increase. Okay students, so this is called a demand pull inflation. Now what are the factors? Now you will be wondering, what are the factors that causes an increase in aggregate demand? You see aggregate demand is increasing from AD1 to AD2 to AD3 to AD4. AD4. How does this aggregate demand increases? So there are two major factors that causes demand pull inflation. Okay, that is, first one is monetary factors. I can put like this. First one is monetary factors. Monetary factors. Two major factors that causes this demand pull inflation. Monetary factors is nothing but increase in money supply. Increase in money supply. Okay, and next one is real factors. Real factors. Real factors. That is, real factors are increase in demand for real output. That is, increase in factors that increases the demand for real output. Increase in demand for real output. Demand for real output. Okay, so aggregate these two major factors are monetary factors, which will trigger the aggregate demand, that is money supply, and real factors, that those are the factors that increases the demand for real output. These are the two major factors which causes demand pull inflation. So money supply you already know. Classical economists also says when money supply increases, price level also increases. There is no doubt about it. Now let us see what are these real factors. Real factors are those factors which increases the demand for real output. Which are they? That's what we are going to see. So the real factors are either one or all of the following. Let us see what are those factors. Okay, what are those factors? Real factors. So I think I can rub this. The real factors. You have to draw exactly like this and learn, otherwise it's not possible for you to learn. So the real factors are the real factors. Let me put this correctly. The real factors are, second factor are real factors. Okay, real factors are those factors which increases the demand for real output. Which are they? Now first one, real, let us put this as B, real factors. Which are they? First one, increase in government expenditure without the changing tax structure. First one, increase in government expenditure without changing the tax structure. Without a change in the tax structure. That's the first reason, first factor. Now see, it increases the demand for output. Why? When government expenditure increases, people get more income in their hands and the tax structure remains the same. So they need not to pay high tax. They pay the same amount of tax but they have more income. This income will create demand for goods and services. That will cause increase in aggregate demand and demand pull inflation. That is one cause. Second one is cutting tax rate without a change in the government expenditure. Cut in tax rate without change in the government without change in government expenditure. Now what you see here, government expenditure remains the same. That means government is going on spending. Then, but taxes are cut. What do you mean by taxes are cut? Taxes are reduced. When a tax is reduced, what does it mean? People get more income. Okay. So now taxes for disposable income will increase. What is your income? Is either allocated for consumption and saving. Okay. Now, what is YD? What is YD? YD is Y minus T. That is income minus taxation is called YD. Okay. When taxes are reduced, what happens? YD will increase. Disposable income will increase, and whenever income increases, it will create more demand for consumption can increase or saving can increase. Consumption increases, which means it increases the demand for real output. Okay, that is how cutting taxes without any change in government expenditure. Government expenditure is not going to be reduced, but the taxes are cut or taxes are reduced. As a result of that, people have more income in their hands and they spend more. So this causes demand pull inflation. Third one is upward shift in the investment function. Upward shift in the investment function. Upward shift in the investment function. Shift in the investment function. Now what is this upward shift in the investment function means? Students of economics will know what are different components of government expenditure. Demand side of expenditures are consumption demand, investment demand, government expenditure and export, right? So that is the expenditure side. Okay, we have learned that. Now, whenever there is an increase in investment expenditure, what do you mean by shift in the upward shift in the investment function means increase in investment demand, which means that is increase in investment. Increase in investment. When investment increases, what happens? These are private businessmen who are starting new production ventures. As a result of that, investment increases. When investment increases, more employment is created. More employment is created means more income. More income means more demand for real output. Can you follow me? Okay, and then fourth one is downward shift in the saving function. Fourth one is downward shift in the saving function. Shift in the saving function. What does it mean? Saving function. Downward shift means a reduction in saving. Whenever savings are reduced, automatically the consumption expenditure is increased, right? So downward shift in the saving function means a decrease in saving will also increase consumption expenditure. Consumption expenditure is one of the component of aggregate demand. Okay. Then fifth one is upward shift in the export function. Upward shift in the export function. Upward shift in the export function. What does it mean? Export function. What does it mean? It means increase in export. Okay. What does it mean? Increase in export. Extra is export. Increase in export. So increase in export means what? People of our country gets more income from other countries. Or other countries people spend on our goods and services. So we get more income. More income means more demand for goods and services. And the opposite of that is downward shift in the import function. Downward shift in the import function. Downward shift in the import function. Import function. What is downward shift in the import function means? Imports are reduced. M represents import. Imports are reduced means what? We are not spending on foreign goods and services, but we are spending more on our goods and services. Okay, so these are the demand pull factors from that's caused by real factors. Real factors means those factors that increases the demand for real output, and in that way it causes demand pull inflation. Okay students, so this is called demand pull inflation. Money supply, of course you know, when money supply increases, investment demand increases, which means money supply increases, and as a result of that demand for labor and capital increases, and when the labor and capital remains fixed, what happens? These factors cannot be brought forth unless they pay a very high price, because then other the factors which are already employed are attracted by higher wages. Higher wages means a higher price for goods and services, and higher price for goods and services means inflation. Okay, so this is known as demand pull inflation. I think it is clear to you. So if you have any queries, you can ask me personally. Okay, I wish you all the best.